Hello, everybody. Welcome to the show. We have another great guest here. This is Mike Perrine. Mike, say hello to the audience.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I go way back with this man, Paul. I don't know if you
Yes,
remember the
I
old behind the scenes backroom meetings that everybody used to have in New York.
yes, absolutely. Mike, I know from New York for a long time. He has a great show on, is it Instagram or YouTube as well?
Well, I have the podcast and I have the Academy, and everything is either on a podcast app or on YouTube, so people can check it all out.
Wonderful. I'm going to put those links below everybody. But Mike has an amazing story. He has been on a vegan diet for 30 years now. And Mike, when you were growing up, did you want to stop eating animals when you were older? Or how were you when you were growing up? Were you sick? What was your story?
No, when I was growing up, so I grew up in the 80s and 90s. I was born in the 70s, but I grew up in New York, in Staten Island, New York. It's like the land of pizza. And of course, in the 80s, it was what processed food and like all this was just normal. And came from a great family, but I just made really bad decisions as I was kind of getting out on my own. And I started eating horrible food, of course, started getting deep into alcohol culture. Staten Island is a place, like it's an awesome place. Like I'm so grateful I grew up there. But like at 1:45 p.m., I would be in my math class. And then at 7:30 p.m., I'd be going into the bar down on Bay Street, and my math teacher would be checking my fake ID and letting me into the bar. So there was a lot of room to get yourself into trouble, and that's just the light version of it. So, I was deep into alcohol culture. I smoked cigarettes from a very young age. Like, I grew up in a house or, like at my Nana's house on a Sunday, everyone would be eating Italian food. And then after they'd play cards and the whole room was full of smoke. And I'd be sitting down eating ice cream, watching TV. It was just like that was the culture. That was it. It was kind of very innocent in a way because people were just less aware and less educated. But I grew up in that. And by the time I was 18, 19 years old, I was drinking every day. My body was completely destroyed. I don't know if you remember, but I'm in one of the I'm in the raw life, a
Yes,
before and after picture.
absolutely. I have a before and after picture of you.
Yeah, I'm in the raw life, and you can see what my body was at 19 when I should have been at my prime. I should have had abs. I should have been athletic. I should have looked good. I was just a complete, absolute slob with bowel issues and pimples, and like it was not a good look, and it was not a good feel. And spiritually too, I was kind of very lost and deflated. Um, so, I grew up that way. I went for a lot of the bad influences. My parents always tried to steer me in the right direction, but I was always one for indulgence and experimentation.
Sure,
And it
sure.
got me in trouble fast, which was a good thing. I'll tell you,
Yeah.
because I see friends of mine, high school reunions, guys still getting blackout drunk, guys still smoking cigarettes. Now it's 30 plus, 35 years. So I'm kind of glad that it took me to a dark place and I got brought out of it for
Yeah.
sure.
Everybody, when Mike said he was in the Raw Life, my first book called The Raw Life, Becoming Natural in the Unnatural World, there it is. I have before and after pictures in there. And one of them is of Mike, amazing pictures. It just shows you the testimony of where he was and where he is now. There he is. Look at that. The one on the top there. And just amazing. And I know all those people pretty much. That's amazing. So what happened? So how old were you when you figured it out and when did it? What happened? What made you say, I don't want to do this?
I was 19 and I was going into like, we go from this, like when I was young and drinking, it would be like, there was a lot of fun that happened. Sometimes the friends of mine and I would drink a couple of beers and smoke cigarettes and talk about girls we liked. And it was just sort of this rite of passage. But then as I was getting older and my friends were going to college and I wasn't working and I wasn't in school and I had a young child, I had my first child when I was 15 years old, right? I wasn't taking care of my child. And I would be drinking to a place of like just blackout. And I was drinking like 6 nights a week. So like it went from like this like youthful kind of this is what the culture is, the youth culture is. We're just kind of like experimenting and having fun to like me just like taking it to a dark place. And one night I was like too hungover to go out, and I was in my parents' basement, and I picked up a book, and this book changed my life forever. And it's so important to me. I actually have it right here in my office, and I keep this original copy that I read, the autobiography of Malcolm X. This is the one I picked up. This book right here.
And how
And
to get in your house?
I think that it was a book. I asked my mom about it. I think that it was a book that they probably had from college because there was a lot of books down there, a lot of cool books. Do you remember the book The Forest People by John? I think his name was John Turnbull. It was about the the pygmies and how like the first time they came, they were taken
Sure.
out of the jungle, and like there was a lot of great, interesting books that they had, and I imagine they were college books that they had from what either one of my parents, and I picked up that book and. It was very intimidating to start reading it, especially in the headspace that I was. But something told me, I think of it more of a divine as a divine intervention. It was like, you have to read this book. And I started reading that book, and I was deeply inspired by Malcolm's life and his teachings and the things he learned in his life. And the biggest one was self-responsibility. You know, how like the world wasn't set up. Like I was realizing that like I'm smoking cigarettes and drinking all this cheap alcohol and giving money to these companies that don't care anything about whether I live or die or what happens with my life. And I watched Malcolm transform his own life in that way and take responsibility. Like, you know, he didn't care that there were liquor stores all over the ghettos of at the time through all the black neighborhoods. Like he was just like, that's not gonna, it's just because it's here and it's a temptation and it's in front of me. I'm self-responsible now. I'm not going to partake in that. And I'm gonna take responsibility for my life and my spirituality and my intelligence. And he just started improving himself over and over again. And I took inspiration from that. And I'll make it sound easy, but I stopped drinking, smoking, doing drugs very quickly. You know, it was a challenge, but like I started to clear that. And part of that process was starting to look at my nutrition because I was very much out of shape. My body was very sloppy. I was, you know, overweight. And I had a lot of like internal issues from drinking so much alcohol and smoking cigarettes. So I didn't know anything about health food. The only thing that I thought that I knew at the time that was a good thing is I thought soy milk doesn't have cholesterol. That must be good. Let me go to the health food store and buy some. That's all I knew. You know, I don't recommend soy milk to my clients, packaged soy milk to my clients these days, but I thought this is a good first step. So I went to my local health food store, Family Health Foods in Staten Island, New York, and I was going through the book section, and a bunch of friends of mine had recommended, a bunch of friends of mine were eating vegan diets, not very healthy vegan diets, but they were eating vegan diets, and they had recommended this book, Diet for a New America, and I saw it sitting there. And I grabbed the book and I picked it up and I said, I'm going to read this. And that was my first step in my education toward the relationship between diet and disease.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. Amazing.
In
So
24 hours, I was vegan, 24 to 48 hours. So
really,
we went from McDonald's and late night diner food and 40 ounces of Old English and Marlboro Reds to me now putting a can of chickpeas on brown rice and trying to figure out like how to eat vegan. Yeah, like it was that quick. Yeah.
was it a hard transition for you? Like, did you just do it and like not know what you were doing? Did you struggle with it, or was it something that was easy to do and continue?
It was very challenging initially because I didn't know anything about seasoning food, about making food taste good. And plus, as you know, when we go from very stimulating food, particularly processed food and bad salts, you know, poor quality salts and all these things that can be very stimulating and addicting, and then we're trying to eat more simply, there's a lot of emotional things that come up and food cravings that come up. And that happened for me. And, you know, so I had to sort of work through that, but I was very motivated. You know, I really wanted it to work. And fortunately, I had the privilege of growing up in Staten Island, and Dr. Fred Bishie is from Staten Island, and I had a dear friend from high school whose family was friends with Fred, and I was able to get his number, and I knew that he was a nutritionist that advocated a vegetarian diet, a vegan vegetarian diet. So I said, let me go to him. And I had lost about 60 pounds in about 3 to 4 months. I was detoxing hard, skin things popping up, fevers, body ache, like everything just starting to come out of me very rapidly. I was also young, so my body was like really bounced, like it just jumped right into it. And I knew I needed some help, so I went to him as a client, and his intermediate diet actually made it worse because it was so simple and like he doesn't teach you how to season food or anything. But I was doing it and I was doing it hard and my body was changing. And then eventually I went to culinary school. Actually, I went to a natural foods culinary school and I learned how to make amazing tasting salads and raw foods. And I was doing cooked vegan food in the beginning. And it all just became, I got so enthusiastic about it. It was so much fun going through the detoxes, learning about the new foods. What is miso? What is a durian? What is a jackfruit? What are these things that I'd never experienced in my life growing up, you know? And yeah, it was great. And Dr. Bishie explained to me, he said, listen, I know you lost a lot of weight very rapidly. I know that you're getting these headaches and you're getting all this stuff. He goes, you need to understand that's not the end result of the diet you're on. He goes, that's a process that's been initiated and you need to come out on the other side. And I went, I got it. And I stayed with it. And I came out on the other side. And it was a beautiful experience, but it was tough. And I understand why a lot of people have challenges with it. It wasn't fun all the time.
How old were you when you went there to Dr. Bishi?
19 years old,
What year were you born?
75.
Okay.
Yeah, I
Okay.
was born in 75. So I was 19 years old when I met him, and that was 30 years ago.
Well, you and I have a mutual friend who you went to culinary school with, Peter.
Yes.
And from what I think, I met you actually at Angelica Kitchen when you and him were working there, I believe. And
That was
then,
one of the first times, yeah.
yeah, and I remember one time we went to your house at the time and hung out. I remember that. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's right.
It was a really cool place you lived. It was a really cool house you had. It was like in a building. It was like over in somewhere in the city, like on the second floor. So
I'm
it was
trying
like
to remember the
it
time
was
because we're
like
talking 20, we're talking
yeah,
1997 now.
yeah,
So that
yeah.
was a
But I
while ago.
remember it really well. Anyway, so I was just on my path and just I was going out to vegetarian restaurants and vegan restaurants and it was great. And so Dr. Bishi, for everybody that doesn't know, he's been on the show many times. He's 95 years old now and he's just amazing, amazing teacher and just an amazing example of what we should strive to be at when it comes to our health. So after you go through this transformation and this change, and now you become a culinary chef, a vegan chef, you started working at some restaurants in New York, right?
Started working the crown jewel of the vegan restaurants back then was Angelica Kitchen. Wasn't a raw food
Absolutely.
restaurant. That hadn't caught fire yet
Yep.
in the popular wellness culture at the time. That wasn't raw food wasn't a thing yet. Um, but there was a lot of raw food and fermented food and like there was a lot of emphasis on that, but it was like sort of like an what's the which we do it was a sort of an uplifted macrobiotic restaurant, like it had a lot of macrobiotic influence. There's a lot of tofu and tempeh and beans and grains, very agrarian type of menu, but that was great for me in the early days. That was great for me when I was 22 years old, because it was so much better than everything I was doing. So and I was always making sure at Fred's direction that I was always juicing. I was always eating raw salads. I was always eating raw fruits. And then, I would have like these macro bowls and stuff. And yeah, I put in a lot of time doing that, but there was really no money in that. It was very idealistic work that I was able to do in my 20s that it allowed me to create a great relationship with with food in regards to what I make for myself and my family. And I really came to understand farming because we worked with a lot of local farmers. We catered the Biodynamic Farming Conference in West Virginia every year. I understood food handling and how to work with it. So in that regard, it really helped me with like what I do today. But there wasn't a lot of money in it. But that was like my high school. Like I think back very fondly on all the people I met there. I'm still friends with many of them to this day. Like it was a great place. It was more than just a restaurant for people to
Absolutely.
understand. If people ever hear me talk about this restaurant in my podcast or anything, like my wife always asks me, she's like, why do you glorify this place so much? It's like a job you used to work. Like, what is that? And I'm like, no, it was an entire education. It was an entire community. It was an energy. It was a place that you would go to and you would have conversations with people in the restaurant or eat different foods that would just open you up to an entirely new experience that you're just not going to get just eating, a vegetable plate at another place. Like it was a movement,
The
Angelica Kitchen.
amazing thing is, at the same time, I ended up being a raw food chef at Caravan of Dreams at the same time.
Right.
And I was like, it was just the whole Lower East Side at that time. Then Quintessence came. And listen, man, when I first went raw, I believe like in Jaffa Cafe, like every night eating the avocado salad without the egg
Right. With
for
that carrot
$8.
dressing.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
carrot dressing. It was
So
amazing.
good.
Yeah. So that was great. So after Angelica's Kitchen, like, did you leave that because they closed? Did you leave that because you were ready to move on? What happened?
What happened was David Wolf wrote the Sun Food Diet Success System. You wrote The Raw Life. I found out through this book that Fred was a raw foodist. I had no idea. He didn't tell me that. I'd known him for years already at that point. He didn't, he used to say that he didn't want to be ostracized by the scientific community, so he never really put it out there. I mean, he talked about being like, vegan and vegetarian and plant-based or whatever they were calling it back then, but he didn't talk about the raw food part that much. And I kind of fought the raw food thing in my head because in my mind, I had already made peace with the fact that we were supposed to eat whole foods and humans have been growing these whole grains and beans for thousands of years. And so I was like, oh, this is the way, this is the way. And then the raw food thing came up and in my head was like, that doesn't make sense. Exclusively raw. Like I couldn't quite get it yet. And I started to go to the talks that were being given. I went to some of yours. I went to see David Wolf. I found out Fred was a raw foodist. I read the interviews in your book, and it all started to click for me. And I started to make shifts, and I started to just sort of fall out of alignment with the process of making whole grain, whole wheat brownies,
Yeah,
like,
I
or,
remember vividly. I remember because Donna and I and Matthew Grace and Ed Lieberman, we had Accent on Wellness right there in the Lower East Side, and you came
Mhm.
in a couple of times. I remember.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, yeah,
Definitely. And then talking to Fred about it, and then someone that I knew needed to get colonics. And they said, will you come with me to this thing? And I said, oh yeah, I'll go. I didn't know too much about it. But then I looked and I said, wait, this is the guy, Gil Jacobs. I'm like, this is
yeah,
the guy that was in the book that I
yeah.
saw. So the Gil says, kid, he goes, you don't have to wait outside. He goes, come on in the room. And I was like, okay. I was like, I'll come in. And now suddenly I'm watching a colonic. I'm this like young natural food chef watching this colonic, and I'm kind of fascinated. I'm listening to Gil, and he goes, kid, he goes, you got a vibe. He goes, what's your deal? He goes, you're into health food. You're into like you do something. And I was like, yeah. And I told him I know Fred, and he's like, yeah, I can tell. And I said, Gil, though, I said, there's one thing though, I've been thinking about maybe I'll go back to eating eggs or fish or something. I said, I don't always have the energy I had in the beginning. Like I don't, I like, I'm not, I'm like, I'm doing great. My weight's down, my skin is clear. I feel, but like, I was like, I don't know. Like, I think I should have more energy. I feel like I read these books, I should feel like Superman, but I don't. He goes, nah, kid, you just need to take a really big shit. We're getting you on the table next. And I was like,
Tell
okay.
everybody what a colonic is for those people that don't know.
Colon hydrotherapy is basically using water to clear out the debris in the large intestine. And, one of the things that makes vegan, plant-based, and raw food diets so valuable is that they not only do they help sweep waste out of the intestine, but they don't leave residue in the intestine. And when we get into processed foods and animal foods, one of the biggest challenges with those, among many, is that it clogs the system, and it's not meant to pass through our. If we look if we compare ourselves to other species, we don't have the intestines to pass large volumes of dairy products, meat, or any type of refined carbohydrates or processed food through it. So when a lot of people get into clean diets to whatever their philosophy is, um, getting the treatments helps to remove a lot of that old accumulated waste that may be there from their previous lifestyle.
Okay.
And I had quite a bit of it, and that's why
So
Gil
Gil
was.
says get on the table. So you're doing a raw diet somewhat. You're not feeling energy. You're questioning it, and Gil says get on the table. We're going to do a colonic.
Yeah, and I didn't feel anything the first couple, to be honest, but then it hit, and I was listening to Gil, and then it really hit me, and I was like, oh, now I'm really starting to understand the relationship between elimination and health, because they were all eating vegan diets, raw food, and everyone's bouncing around his office looking great, feeling great, and I wasn't doing bad, I have to say, but I was just sort of questioning it a little bit because it had been about 7 years in now, and I just thought I should be honestly, I was probably just overworking myself a bit, but Gil was like, no, we need to open things up. We need to open you up here. And yeah, they were all doing amazingly well. So I was like, what are they doing that I'm not doing? And I didn't know anything about cleansing work. First of all, didn't know anything about a colonic. I mean, who did, especially back in those days. I didn't know anything about saunas. That was stuff that guys on Wall Street did on lunch breaks and cut back, backroom deals in, sitting in the sauna. I didn't even think of a massage as a therapeutic thing. I thought that's something couples did together on a Valentine's Day. Like I didn't have it in my head, the what body work was that would help improve my chemistry. I didn't know. So I was just now I'm learning about it with Gil. Um, so I started doing the work with him and adapting my diet into a more raw diet and a simple diet. And my son started going to private school, and I wasn't making any money in the restaurants, and I was watching people in the waiting room heal from advanced diseases and go through tremendous lifestyle changes. The waiting room at Gil's office doing colonics. And Gil said to me, I wanted to be like Fred. I wanted to be a nutritionist. I was going to go back to school to study nutrition. And Gil said, look, I know that you're really into studying nutrition. He goes, but I'm going to tell you something. All the minutia of the enzymes and the phytochemicals and the antioxidants and the blah, 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 blah. He's like, that's like 20% of it. He goes, that's important. He goes, but 80% is elimination. If you want to affect your clients, he's like, you got to get them shitting, pissing, and sweating. I'm sorry, Paul. I keep cursing on your show. I tell everyone, I'm like, I have the heart of a vegan and the mouth of a trucker. I'm from Staten Island. I'm sorry. And he really inspired me to start to do the work. And I became a colonic therapist, and that was 23 years ago. I didn't know it was going to become such a long career, but that's sort of what I specialized in.
Is
And I
that what
still
you do?
do.
You still doing that now?
I have a studio out here in Ashland now. I had the biggest studio in New York at the time, and then COVID, the pandemic, just messed everything up with that. But yeah, I had done it in New York for 18 years. Eventually I had like a 3-room space with saunas and cryo chambers, and like I finally when I was 40 years old, I built the just sort of the pinnacle of my career. Pandemic happened, things got a little twisted, but anyway, I'm very happy. I'm out here. I have a smaller studio now in Ashland, and I also work with people nutritionally. So right before this session, I was doing a nutritional detox consultation with someone. So yeah, so that's the work I'm doing now, and that all started with working with Gil. And yeah, it's one of the more interesting careers that somebody can have. I'll tell you that.
Excellent, excellent. So I got a couple of so you've been vegan now 30 years. So do you
Yeah,
take supplements?
I definitely take some vitamin D. I started taking like a plant-based multi, and I'm not very good at it. So what I'll do is I'll take it for a little while, and then for like a few months I won't buy it again, So, but I do take them. I take a plant-based multi, and I take vitamin D for sure. Every once in a while I'll drop a little B12 under my tongue. I kind of forget to do that for months at a time as well. The only thing I ever tested deficient in was after a New York winter. I tested deficient in vitamin D. And I said, yeah, that makes sense. I've been sitting in front of a computer for 4 months and working on my podcast in the house and, not really doing much outside. Um, so I definitely take vitamin D. And that's about it, aside from luxury supplements, things like Vilasta, astaxanthin, certain green powders, things that like I don't think are absolutely essential to me having success, but they're a luxury and they're good. So they're quality supplements. So I take them. But the only essentials I really do is I try to cover bases with like multis and vitamin D.
So you do get your blood tested?
I don't too often. I did many years ago, and when I had that, my B12 was great. Like I wasn't supplementing at the time for years, for like a decade. Everything was fine, but the vitamin D was low. And then I just thought, oh, okay, let me make sure I supplement with this, especially in the winter. So I do. And then the multi I just started taking just to, I don't know, cover some bases. I don't eat a lot of food all the time,
Give
sometimes.
us an example of that's my next question. Give me an example of your diet. What do you eat and each day on average?
Well,
On average, I know it's different some days. Or is it an average or is it always different?
it changes only slightly, honestly. One of the things so I'll give the outline of my day. One of the things I finally got together, and this is partially because of you, but it took me a long time to do, was to start eating earlier and shifting my whole day early. I used to intermittent fast 17 to 20 hours a day back in New York when I was working all the time, but I did it in reverse. So I would fast all day. I might drink a juice or something by 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or maybe have like a couple mangoes or whatever. And then uh, at like 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, I was eating dinner. And that's what we all did because that's kind of the way, that's what the cultural norm of that city is. And that's a cultural norm of a lot of places. But in New York, sometimes we take our last client at 7:30. And then I'm not getting to the restaurant, the raw food restaurant, Quintessence or Pure Food and Wine or wherever. I'm not even getting there till 9:30. So it's like, so anyway, I realized as I was getting older and feeling it more and having young children and needing to maximize my sleep cycle, especially when my younger kids were even younger and they would keep us up all night. And I was like, I need to maximize my sleep cycle. I can't be eating dinner at 7 o'clock at night. When I moved to Oregon, I wasn't eating at 9 or 10 anymore. I was eating more at like 7. But I was like, I can't do that anymore. So I don't eat past 4:30, and I try not to eat past 3:30 if I can these days. But my day basically looks like this. I wake up about 4:30, 5:30 in the morning. I just drink water. Sometimes I have some like chamomile tea or something like that. Mostly just water. And then by about 9:30, I have a meal of fresh fruits or some raw vegetable juice. Um, Sometimes after that, I'll have like a little raw bar or something, like, a little vanilla almond bar that I make with dates and almonds, or I'll have a coconut smoothie with like some fresh walnut milk and coconut meat and some dates. And then I have dinner at about 2:30, and that's almost always the same every night. Recently, it's been a big raw salad. I will steam some vegetables and have them, like some steamed broccoli or some steamed asparagus or something. Uh, and I'll get like, let's say like a coconut wrap, put a little cashew butter in it, put the salad in it, eat it that way, and that's about it. And then I'm done at 4:30. And then I just do nothing, drink a little water before I go to bed, and then start the process over the next day. And
What
that's
time?
basically the way I live
What
for
time you normally going to sleep?
I usually go to sleep about 10:30.
Okay, so you're getting
Yeah.
about 6 hours a night sleep, so.
That's I prefer a little bit more, but I mean, not to share too much, but I got to wake my son up to go to the bathroom, and if I do it too early, it's not effective. If I do, so I got to stay up till about 10:30 to make sure he
Sure,
gets up to pee before the rest of the night goes on. Otherwise, I have other things waking me up in the middle of the night.
sure. So, and what about your wife? Does she eat the same way you do?
She does not eat the same way that I do. She eats a lot more food because she's been pregnant and breastfeeding for the past few years. She's vegetarian. She does eat eggs from the chickens that we have. We have a lot of rescue chickens that we take in, and they eat all organic feed and bugs and grass from our yard, and they make eggs every day. So she eats those. But she does eat, she eats the salads with me. She eats mostly plant-based. We eat an all organic diet. We shop at the farmers market and the local food co-op, and she likes some gluten-free pastries and pizza and things like that. So she doesn't keep it quite as she's not as much of a purist as I am, but we're very aligned with the things that we do. We don't have chemicals in our house. We don't spray things in our garden and on our property. She plants a pollinator garden. We have an organic vegetable garden and little mini fruit orchard. So like, yeah, we're kind of on board with a lot of the same things.
Sure. And besides you doing the colonic business, do you personally still do colonics?
I do. Yeah, I still do them.
How often?
Oh, on myself, you mean? Oh,
Yes.
I'm sorry. I do them as needed. I don't do them as much as I used to. I did a lot of treatments on myself in the beginning for a couple of reasons. One, I was, even though I was into it years, my body was still going through a lot of transition, and I was experimenting with a lot of different cleanses. So I might do liver flushes or psyllium bentonite cleanses. And I was learning, I was becoming a practitioner. And also colonics, at the time, I think they were like $70 a colonic. This is 23 years ago, which was like $1 million to me. So as soon as I could do my own colonics, I was like trying to do them as often as possible because I felt like I was living this luxurious life, right? The luxurious cleansing life. But nowadays, I really just feel into it. And if something's not right in my body or whatever, like I'll do a treatment. But when you live the way that we do, Paul, and you eat the way that we eat, and I do the stretching I do, and I hydrate, and I'm eating a mostly raw diet, and I'm not eating late at night. And, like my elimination is pretty great. My body really takes care of itself, it handles it quite well. If I'm doing some type of cleanse, if I'm doing a juice fast or something, I'll definitely do a treatment. If something's not right, I'll definitely do a treatment.
So there are different types of colonics, and some of them have like an open tube where you could actually see what's coming out. It's like floating in the water. You've done those over the years?
Well, the ones that we do that we specialize in, we even build the systems. We train. I do advanced trainings for therapists now. I don't certify people, but I do the advanced trainings for them. Or I'll even do Zoom consults for different practices around the country, teaching them how to build good units and all that. But the gravity systems, there is a clear view tube on the tube, and we have a mirror that points down, so people could just be laying on the table and they could see what exactly they're experiencing. They could actually get a
Yeah.
visual on what's
I
happening.
asked you that because the question is, what's the craziest thing you've ever seen come out of somebody?
Okay. Uh, I've seen organic food labels come out of people. There's one guy I remember, I said, Mark, I said, are you not peeling the stickers off of your produce? And he was kind of new into it, and he lost a bunch of weight. And he's like, I want to eat like you guys. He's like this big jolly guy. His name was Mark, and he had a lot of weight to lose. And he was doing it. He was juice fasting and eating organic food. And but he, I see this little sticker coming through the tube, and I'm like, he was eating the produce stickers off of his food. He's like, I don't know, I just grab the apples and I eat them. And I was like, you should probably peel the stickers off, mark off your apples. Um, I saw probably 100 cherry pits come out of somebody once. And I said to her, I said, were you eating cherries? I was like, what am I looking at? And you could feel them in the tube as I'm pulsing the tube. They're hard pits. And I'm like, what's coming out of you? She goes, oh yeah, I was down in Chinatown and they had cherries everywhere and I was just eating them. I said, well, you can't eat the pits. And she goes, oh, you can't? And I was like, no, you shouldn't be swallowing those things. I was like, it's like you ate a bag of marbles, you have all this stuff coming out of you.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you see the morbid stuff coming out of people. I mean, there's just some people that are holding on to waste and it's fermenting and putrefying in their body for way too long. And when that stuff lets go, it's just yeah, it's just black tar coming out of people.
Have you ever
And
seen anything living come out of someone?
not through the colonic tube, no. And I'll tell you, here's the thing with well, I've seen a lot of evidence of parasites, and I've seen living um, I've seen the evidence of things living in people that's microscopic, meaning a lot of people have bacterial parasites, things that are not visible. Most parasites that are visible, like let's say tapeworm or roundworm or pinworm or something like that, that's alive, has a very hard time coming off of the intestinal wall. There's video footage on YouTube that you can watch where they're chasing them with the colonoscopy instrument, and there's usually water hoses, and they're hitting them with water, and they're trying to snare them and pull them off the mucosal membrane, and they like peel away from the mucosal membrane, like they hold on. So colonic water usually is not enough to free them, or if they're in the waste, they're usually embedded in the waste coming out, and we don't really get a visual. Most of the worms that you see, colonic therapists or different bowel cleansing companies post online, is just fecal mucus. It's not. Most colonic therapists shouldn't even be diagnosing parasites because they're not qualified to. And I see colonic therapists all the time posting pictures of people's fecal mucus, and they're like, look at these worms. But they can't identify what it is. They could never tell you what it was. It's not moving. It very clearly looks like mucus if you know what you're looking at. But anytime they see strings or anything stringy, they just lose their minds and they're like, worms, worms. But it's very rare to actually see it come through people. People will often see them die off and come out in their own toilet when they're taking an herbal protocol or if they're taking a pharmaceutical or antibiotic, because that kills them as well. But yeah, we don't see them come through the colonic tube as often as is promoted on the internet.
Sure. Now, what's the difference if somebody's looking to cleanse between a colonic and something like the Ajuva herbal cleanse?
I'm trying to remember the Ajuva herbal cleanse. I believe
Or there's the
it.
Arise and Shine, the Ajuva. They're just these herbs that help, they say, get out the mucoid plaque and help you cleanse. And you see some videos of people with like sheets of long things coming out of them.
Yeah, those cleanses are mostly they're usually a blend of either herbs and enzymes with psyllium, with some type of gelatinous fiber and clay. It's usually psyllium and bentonite, but there's other clays or fibers they might use. They use like acacia fiber, apple fiber, so they can have like a blend of different things in them. So most of those ropes that you see, so psyllium husk is and psyllium seed. Uh, they're gelatinous fibers that will absorb waste into themselves, but they tend to get stuck in people's bodies. So most of the time, I'm doing a lot of emergency colonics on people where they've done the cleanse and nothing moved. And now it's locking into the waste and it's expanding and expanding and expanding and it's not coming out. Um, this can happen with clay as well. There is this group, there's a spiritual group here in Ashland where I work, and they're the most lovely people. And a lot of the community of that spiritual community come in to see me for treatments. And they were all taking these cleansing products that their gurus were making or promote or selling or something like that. And it was a lot of clay. And these people were making ceramics in their intestines. I mean, like the bricks that we were pulling out of them because they're eating all this clay. So when people take products like that, they definitely they want to make, if their elimination is fantastic, great. If they feel flat and like it's pulling stuff out, great. If their elimination is if it slows down or if it's not great or they feel a little bloated afterwards, they want to be trying enemas or definitely getting colonics, because colonics will help unlock a lot of that stuff. And with the trigger points and the massage techniques of the therapist and the manipulation of the tube, I'm talking about gravity colonics right now because there's other methods. But if they're doing that method, they can ensure that they're going to not only unlock the waste that their body's trying to let off, but they're also going to get the fibers and clays out. But those cleanses are mostly just clays and fibers that are moving through that, in theory, will absorb toxicity and remove it from the body. But it does have it can be challenging to get out. So that's why we always pair them with colonics. Gil Jacobs will tell you he really thinks that the only way to remove that stuff is to do them with colonics. And most of those ropes that you see, the black sheets and everything, that's mostly the psyllium and bentonite clay. So people think it's 90% psyllium and bentonite clay. The darkness and whatever is attached to it and the pockets of grossness or whatever, that's what it has attracted to and cemented and taken out of the body. But
Sure.
most of that is psyllium and bentonite. So that's another misconception we see online where people think like, oh, I have these big, these big rubber things living in my intestine. And it's like people do have cement in their intestine, but the big rubber thing is the psyllium.
Got you.
Yeah.
So I remember I I suffered from ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, and I
Hmm.
went to Gil at the time, and I got my colonics from him. And on an emotional level, it was very difficult because when you have ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, you have uncontrollable bowel movements, and when you're in an attack or an inflammatory stage. So it would almost put you in that same situation sometimes when you're on a colonic table. So it was a very emotional experience for me. And I finally got to the point where unless I thought it was a waste of money to go get a colonic without fasting first, to be as empty as possible, to get as deep stuff as possible. And I believe Gil affirmed that, the less you eat before going to colonic, the deeper it's going to be and the deeper the cleanse is going to be. So, so two questions. Is that true? Like a person should fast before it's better for them to fast before getting colonic? And the other question is do you have clients that have inflammatory bowel disease?
Well, it's always better to prepare for a treatment by not eating the same day. Some of the most coveted appointment times are like 8, 9, 10, 11, because people don't want to eat before their treatment and they don't want to wait all day. They don't want to come
But
in
when
at
you say
9.
not eating the same day, I mean, why not eat for 3 days and get a colonic with the same thinking?
Well, somebody could do that, but most people are not sort of set up to do it that way. I just mean like as far as like what they're equipped to do with their lifestyle and what
Sure,
they
but
do,
would it enhance the colonic if somebody
Um,
came during a fast or after a fast to do it?
Well, during so a lot of so the longer somebody fasts, the more endogenous waste is going to get loosened up. So when people are juice cleansing, they'll come every 3 days to get their treatments, throughout the entirety of the fast, often. But for the average person that's going to be eating all week, to set up for the perfect colonic, they really just need to make sure they're eating broom foods, from Eret's work, right? And they need to make sure that they're just not, you just don't want the body doesn't like to accommodate a new food and do deep releasing in the same moments, right? So we don't want food in transit. So if someone's eating a clean diet, all they really need to do is to finish eating early the next day, and the treatment will be as complete as it can be. Now, if somebody wants to release a deeper level of endogenous waste, then they should, yeah, I would juice fast. Water fasting gets a little tricky with colonics because, you lose a small amount of electrolytes. I mean, probably less than you would in a sauna or doing a heavy, intense exercise at the gym, but you do lose a little bit. So we don't love working on people that have been water fasting for more than a day or two. So if someone's already fasting 3 days on water, they're now living off their own reserves, and it's probably better to be juice fasting before a colonic.
Sure. Okay. And what about ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease or somebody else with an intestinal or colon issue? Do you wait until they're healed or the scars to heal up? Like you won't touch anyone who's bleeding or anything like that, right?
Yeah, we wait for the reactivity to go down because you can trigger a flare up with introducing water to the backside. Yeah, that tissue can be so sensitive, and you don't want to put someone in a bad space. So what we always do is we'll work with somebody nutritionally first to get them to a place where they've not had flare ups for a long period of time. Yeah, and we've done that. And we've done that with diet, and yeah, it's worked well. A lot of people have challenges getting it to happen because, as you know, it requires an entire lifestyle change. The lifestyle that created the condition is, it has to be completely removed.
Sure. Wow, fascinating, fascinating stuff you're doing and so unique. And
Check this out, Paul.
yes, yes.
You're one of the few people in the world I can nerd out on this with. Look at what we have here. This is an original Arnold Ehret Interclean herbal laxative.
Wow, wow.
It's still in here. I don't know.
Where'd you get
It's
that
not
from?
a dear friend of mine, Joseph.
Amazing.
He sent me this and he sent me some other things.
I
And
see his book right there, the blue book. I see that.
yeah, thus speaketh the stomach. And then I
Yep.
got another little book down there. But yeah, I like my stuff. I got rid of a lot of old raw food books because I had just read them all and I really regret it. Like I got rid of like my original Sun Food Diet book. I got rid of my original Sun. Do you remember Nature's First Law, those catalogs they used to put out?
Yep. Yep.
And now that I'm older, I kind of wish I had those old antique kind of books and things like that. But I got rid of a lot of them, unfortunately.
Yeah. Well, it's good. I had a big library and it felt very freeing to let it go. And I was
Yeah.
so it has its good points and so on. But this is great, man. And if somebody like I know you do nutritional counseling, you do that online, right?
I do that online. I only do it by special request, honestly. I do treatments mostly, and I run the academy. And then I don't even advertise it. I do it by special request. I keep the schedule private, but people are always hitting me up, and they're like, "I want to work with you. Do you do consults?" And then I say, "Yes, I do." And that because I don't want to take too much time away from the other projects I'm working on. But I
Right.
do see people. So if someone
Okay.
if someone has that in them, where they're like, "I'm going to go ask," even though there's no schedule, I'll see them.
All right. Tell us about the academy. What's that?
So the academy is really cool. It's like the pinnacle of the work that I've done. And we just changed platforms to make it more accessible for everybody now too. We have a couple of master classes. Dr. Fred Bishy, I am hoping to record a master class with him as well, maybe several. Last time he was, I went to see him in New York. He was very busy. We couldn't get it to happen, but hopefully on my next trip I can do it. I did one with Gil Jacobs. They're about 3.5 hours long, and it's a concentration of everything that I have learned in the past 30 years in 3.5 hours, all the practices and principles of nutritional detox and the cleansing life. And I've made those classes available in a community. We've changed now to a community platform. It's called Everyday Detox Academy. We're on a community platform called School. It's a monthly membership. We do live events. We have Gil Jacobs coming in now on the 29th. He's going to do a live private Zoom Q&A. One of the beauties of this is that we can say whatever we want without worrying about social media flagging us and tagging us for saying the wrong words and things like that. So we can speak very freely. We have our master classes in there. We also have some free classes like Cleansing Kitchen Essentials, where I show how to do certain foods, certain meals. And I also do some of the behind the scenes podcast and some of the old pieces of history in the archives. Like I have a DVD series I did with Dr. Bishy in 2008. I have Gil lecturing in the back of Caravan of Dreams in 2002. So I'm kind of putting those old lectures and things that I filmed with a VHS camcorder up in there. And I saw that I have one here, Paul. And I don't know what it is because I don't have the original, but this was like burned off of something. And it says Intro to Raw Foods with Paul Nissan and Fred Bishy. And I think I have
Yeah.
another one of yours. So I wouldn't post this in the Academy because this is obviously not mine. This belongs to you. But I have like a lot of these
No, you're
great.
welcome to. That what it is me and Fred did an event at Bonobos. Uh,
Oh, okay.
yeah, I don't know if you know Bonobos, if you knew that
Oh,
place.
yeah.
Yeah. So me and Fred did an event there and we there was a DVD made from it. And
This
yeah,
must be it. I didn't know if it was audio. It's a DVD-R. Obviously we
yeah.
don't use
It
these
was
things anymore.
yeah.
It's probably video. If I have your permission, I'd love to post this for the Academy members in the archive section.
Absolutely. As long as you posted that it's old information because
Yes.
we both learned. But yeah, please do. And if you ever get it online, send it to me. I'd love to see it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll let you know when I post this. And yeah, I always let everybody know, like I said, this video is from 2002. Like, Gil has
Yeah.
maybe he's changed some of his ideas since then, but the general message is probably the same. Just take
Yeah,
it with a grain of
absolutely.
salt.
Absolutely. So that's wonderful, man. Everything you're doing. I'm going to put the links below to everything you're doing. Is the best. I know you're all over social media. What's the best way for people to contact you or find about your stuff?
I am on I am on Instagram. as the main social media platform. I can't keep up with all the other ones. I tried to do the TikTok and all the things, but the podcast is anywhere people can find podcasts. Spotify and Apple Podcasts are the two most popular ones. I also put them all on YouTube, so they're up on YouTube as well. And the Academy is where we do the deeper conversations and where we have all this old video content and all the new master classes, and we do the live events. So if people are in the life and they love it and they love learning this stuff, they can come join the Academy.
Excellent, man. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're busy, and we look forward to having you back again. Thank you.
Paul, thank you so much, man. It's an honor to connect with you again after all these years, man. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right, everybody, put your comments and questions below, and if we have time, we'll have Mike come back again and answer some of those questions. And definitely check out his academy and his Instagram and all the great things he's doing because he posts a lot of things there that are very interesting. So thank you, Mike. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Check out all the information below and the links, and also comment below. Have a great day, everybody, and a great raw life.
Nature's wealth, good for your health. This is the raw life health.